Hello everyone, and welcome to the Comic Zone. This is the Comic Zone for March, and joining me on this one is James Phoenix.
Hello.
And the topic this month, we're gonna look at the difference between Marvel animation and DC animation for probably over time. I don't know how far back we're gonna go or how recent we're gonna go, but we'll see when it comes up. First up, we'll discuss the cartoons, the series, if you will. Which series are you familiar with, or which era of series are you best familiar with? I'd guess probably 90s.
Most of the 90s, yeah, that was when I watched a lot of cartoons. So, on the DC side, I was watching Batman the Animated Series, I saw some episodes of the Superman series, the Static Shock Animated Series, some Justice League Unlimited, stuff like that. And then, on the Marvel side, I know that I always watched the Spider-Man and the X-Men cartoons that were always on the Fox Kids network. And I know I saw later on X-Men Unlimited a little later on. That was the one with Nightcrawler, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I know I saw some episodes of that later on. But yeah, mostly the 90s and maybe little early 2000s.
Okay, so let's start with the 90s first, which is the DC Animated Universe, or Timverse as people call it, versus the 90s Marvel, and what differences there is between them. I'll just say the obvious one first. The big obvious one would be, while they were both technically meant to be in the same universe as all their stuff, like Spider-Man crossed over with X-Men and so forth, I think the DC one did that much better. Where Batman went into Superman, Batman and Superman joined up, and then you had Justice League, and they all just bled in perfectly. Ironically, the way the Marvel films do at the moment, but I think that would be one of the big differences, anyway.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Is that with the Marvel shows, they cross over now and again, but it always felt really forced and like they didn't belong in each other's worlds. As much as it did, there was some certain familiar aspects. It did seem like there was a distinction between, I think, the creators of one show and the creators of another, and they had a hard time working their stuff in together. Whereas with the DC, all of the DC shows were done pretty much by the same people, as far as I recall.
Pretty much all by Bruce Timm, which is why people call it the Timverse.
Right, so as a result, that made it easier to blend in, because number one, it was the same characters, the animation style was identical. So you believed that all the people looked alike, so you believed it was all in the same universe. And it made sense, but all the designs were the same, and the way the actors were generally, the overall slightly more serious tone that the DC verse usually took was maintained through all the different shows. So you could see how it all fit together and it all made sense. From the darkness of Gotham made sense, but when you went to Metropolis, it was lighter and there was a much happier tone to it. But you could still see that it was similar, because Superman could come to Gotham once in a while. And you could see the contrast between this bright costume and the darkness. And if Batman came to Metropolis, same deal.
Yep.
So it worked out very well together.
I will also say, in the 90s, with the animation style, I will say, going back and looking at it now, at the time, being younger and watching it, all of them were enjoyable. But going back, I think the DC one actually stands up the test of time, because they didn't try and replicate the comics with how they looked. They did a new style that worked and matched everything perfectly, so they still look great. Whereas 90s X-Men, it looked like 90s comics, and it looks like shit when you go back and watch it now.
That's exactly what I was going to do. My next point is the fact that the DC universe looks very polished, it looks very professional, and it looks very like it could have been made today, and you would believe that. Whereas when you look at the X-Men and Spider-Man 90s cartoons, they're very obviously made in the 90s. They look like they're from that era. They're not as polished. They're more cartoony. They're, just the general animation style is a lot less polished and professional. And it's very obvious that it's a cartoon from the past, whereas if you were to compare that to the cartoons of today, it's very obvious that it's not one of today's cartoons.
Yep. Because the approach the DC ones had, especially with early on with the Batman ones, was they didn't try and make it like some sort of like the comics or anything. They tried to go more, you know what I mean? They tried to go more old school with it, which in itself makes it almost new, because it's like a serial that you're watching. It makes it feel more grown up without it actually being more grown up. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was darker, but you had darker storylines in, like, you had dark storylines in, like, the animated Spider-Man one, but it didn't feel as dark, if that makes sense, because these ones, like, the music, just the music for like the Batman the Animated Series, with like the silhouette and how they took cues from like the old style like serials you used to get on TV, like the Flash Gordons and stuff like that, like the black and white. Even so far as to include a blimp with the spotlights and stuff to make it feel like a very 50s yet modern.
Yeah.
It worked.
Not just that, in the Batman series, they had an entire episode that was a tribute to the 50s superhero serial with the Grey Ghost.
Yep, voiced by Adam West.
Very awesome.
Yep, that was an awesome episode. Now, I will say I did enjoy 90s Spider-Man. Out of the 90s Marvel stuff, that's the only one that I can still watch.
Oh yeah, I love 90s Spider-Man. That, to this day, to me, that is Spider-Man. Even, you take your Tobey Maguires and your Andrew Garfields and your Neil Patrick Harrises and all these other stuff, that is Spider-Man.
I'll agree to disagree with that. I love that series, but to me, the best Spider-Man animated series we've had is probably Spectacular.
Fair enough. I haven't watched any of that, so
yeah.
If I watched it, my mind might change. But growing up, that was always the Spider-Man I saw, so I always thought of that as being Spider-Man. So that's just the Spider-Man that was ingrained in my brain from a very young age, watching it on Fox Kids. That's why, when I saw other things, it didn't feel right with the Spider-Man, especially because that particular voice actor, more than any others, I think nailed the witty banter. And that was always great about that show, is that was the fun, entertaining Spider-Man, who wasn't just beating up goofy supervillains, he was insulting them at the same time, and that's what made it entertaining.
He was. And let's not forget, unfortunately, what they did with the Spider-Man cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, once that ended, there was a little series on the on the DC side called Batman of the Future. It was in continuity with Justice League and stuff, kind of. And it was about Old Man Bruce training a new guy, Terry McGinnis, to be Batman. It was pretty cool. Marvel realized how cool this concept was, and we got Spider-Man Unlimited. Which, some of the concepts with that was cool. Some of the concepts was cool, and I can still watch it and find some good in it. But, yeah, it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, and for those of you that are from my side of the pond, that earlier referenced Batman show is called Batman Beyond over here.
Ah, yeah, Batman Beyond.
And that show's fucking amazing. I love that show.
It was. One of the best animated films as well came out with that.
Yeah, the Return of the Joker, yeah.
It did. But Spider-Man Unlimited, they tried to put Spider-Man in the future, give him similar tech to the Batman one, made him go against alien beasts on bikes that flew. This is where it starts to stop being like Batman.
In other words, where it stops being good.
Yeah, but the cool part from that one, which I did enjoy, was the Synoptic. I'm not sure if you remembered that, or if you hadn't seen that show.
Which show is that? The Spider-Man one? No, I have not seen that.
The Synoptic. Basically, Venom and Carnage get on board the rocket piloted by Jameson's son that was going towards New Earth because they found an Earth identical to our own, the other side of the sun. Basically, they go there because they found a way to get there. They go there, and which ends up being basically like the future, but they go there because they find out that's where the Synoptic is, which is where all symbiotes come from. And the series is amazing for one reason. It got cancelled before they made it good again. Because they had plans to put him back on Earth, back on modern times, and you'd see Mary Jane and stuff like that again. Cool.
Okay.
However, it got cancelled before that, so it ends on a cliffhanger in which Venom and Carnage turn everyone on the planet into symbiotes. And
nice.
Spider-Man and his friends are just like, oh, we can't win, and then that's how it ends. So, yay, Venom won!
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
But I will say the difference between those two, I will say Spider-Man Unlimited, ironically, the animation holds up a little bit more than the 90s Spider-Man, but the writing doesn't. But I will say that's something they started to do. They started to emulate each other, and then they also tried to copy whatever films come out, like the MTV Spider-Man was basically fucking the movies. Which, I will say the MTV Spider-Man, for those of you who haven't seen it, looks phenomenal. It's probably the best looking animated superhero show we've had. in terms of look. Everything else is shit.
Fair enough.
Everything else is shit.
I will give them credit for having Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah, they get props for that, but it was still bad. Although, the end episode was kind of cool.
Oh, was it?
Spider-Man ends up accidentally murdering his girlfriend due to these people
Which one?
One made up for the show. Ah. And basically, these twins with psychic abilities make him murderer and stuff. Nice. And then at the end, once he's finally stopped them and all that, he goes, he basically does the I'm Spider-Man no more, puts his suit into a briefcase filled with bricks and just tosses them in the river. Which means, as bad as that show is, it kind of actually has an ending. It has a depressing ending.
But it's an ending, yeah.
Yeah, it's still an ending.
That's one of the... I mean, even Batman Beyond didn't even have a real ending.
No, unless you count the fact that the Justice League episode.
Right, yeah, that was the real ending. They went back to that later, which is very cool, by the way.
Yeah, but...
the worst thing is you're describing as Spider-Man Unlimited show. The worst thing is, okay, so you got this, Spider-Man Unlimited, what's going on? You want a show about your heroes that face the future? You have a series called Fucking Spider-Man 2099.
Never heard of it.
Make that shit.
I'm kidding. Yeah, that would have been awesome. But the way they did it, no. What the hell? They could have even gone Spider-Girl.
That would have been cool. Yeah, the Mayday Parker, yeah.
Yeah, because then you could have had Old Man Peter with, like, one leg helping her.
That would have been awesome. Even, like, fucking Oracle and shit. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, which that would have been cool. But no, they didn't. Instead, they chose to put him on an alien planet with bestials on bikes. Enough said. But yeah, I will say modern...
The badass biker mice from Mars?
Yeah. I will say the modern cartoons, though, it's swapped. Which is a very interesting dynamic to look at.
That's true. I haven't watched a lot of episodes of the modern shows, but I've seen a couple episodes of that Iron Man show with the young Tony Stark. That's pretty awesome.
I was not including that one. That's horrible. I hate that show. When they turned him into Spider-Man. Although, it looks cool, I will admit it looks cool, but what I was on about with the modern ones is, a load of the ones now, because of how Cartoon Network functions, when they got a good show like Young Justice, that was fucking awesome, probably the best superhero show we've had in years, and they cancelled it for stupid reasons, but besides that one, when you look at the other ones at the same time, they've done like Batman... What the hell's the new one where it's like all 3D and you got Alfred with guns and shit? The Green Lantern show, which wasn't that good. Whereas you go over to Disney and you look at what Disney's done with the animated Marvel, and Ultimate Spider-Man is a bit... don't really care for too much for that show. But the Avengers show is fucking awesome.
Nice. That
one's awesome. And apparently, Hulk Agents of Smash can be enjoyable for some people, but I don't understand. I think that goes more into the budget.
Fair, yeah, I think Disney has a lot more money to put into that sort of thing than the DC people do right now.
Yep. Well, DC has a lot of money, and so does Warner Brothers. It's just Cartoon Network itself that isn't functioning. But yeah, it's a case of...
Well, let's not forget. I mean, I'm really shocked that their cartoons aren't working. Like, DC can't even get their comics to work anymore. I mean, these are the people that cost themselves an amazing Batwoman comic because they refused to let her get married.
They did, but I will also say, New 52. If you've read the New 52 stuff, it's actually fucking awesome. It's better than, say, Brand New Day.
Anything's better than Brand New Day.
That's not true. What about Superior Spider-Man? That's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah, but no. As a rule, though, when you look back over all of them over time, the key thing seems to be the Marvel animated shows are more bright and cheerful to capture kids' attentions, whereas the DC ones tend to be more written like they were the comics, which some people don't like because it happens to retell the comic stories, but they do that so that the kids reading it could then pick up the comics and buy it. Both approaches work, it just depends on which one you like.
Exactly.
Which I will say, ironically, that's the same thing that they do with the animated movies, because I know you haven't seen all the animated movies, but Marvel animated movies tend to be more bright and casual, whereas the DC ones tend to be heavily assuming you know who the fuck these people are.
Right. Well, that's pretty obvious. That's pretty obvious even in their live action movies. I mean, if you look at Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Avengers movies, they're pretty bright. They're pretty cheery. I mean, yeah, there's bad guys, but everything's kind of it's very comic booky. Whereas you got the Dark Knight.
Yeah, you do. But to be fair with the Dark Knight, it tells you who the characters are. Well, what I was referring to with that is, if you go to watch, say, like Ultimate Avengers, every character that pops up there, they make a point of telling you, like, oh yeah, Thor, you mean the Asgardian god? Oh, Iron Man, the guy in the suit, yeah, I know him. Whereas you go and watch, like, say, Spider-Man, Batman, Public Enemies, there's a whole fucking scene in which shitloads of villains...
Spider-Man, Batman, Public Enemies, when did that come out?
Sorry, Superman, Batman, Public Enemies.
I want to see Spider-Man, Batman, Public Enemies.
Yeah, Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. You go watch that one, and you got whole scenes where there's, like, a load of enemies and a load of good guys trying to hunt them down. And they don't tell you who the fuck these people are. To the point where I was watching it with people and they were like, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? And I had to explain it to them, but it's like I just recently watched the Flashpoint one. I recently watched the Flashpoint one.
Flashpoint's one of the comic events I've actually read.
Yeah. I read the Flashpoint one, and while they did change it, like they do with the animated movies where they change it slightly from the comics, it still feels very much like you'll like this if you like the comics, not necessarily if you're more the casual. Mm-hmm. But it's a case of it doesn't have to tell you who the fuck everyone is over and over again. You just have to know the characters to understand some of the stuff. Which I don't know whether or not which one people will prefer, but I prefer that one. I prefer the DC one as the comic fan, because it's like the animated comic movies, when they go direct to DVD, the people who are going to buy them are going to be the comic fans. Make them for them. You've got the films for the casuals, live action films for the casual stuff. Do animated ones. Like, I'd love to see an animated Kingdom Come.
That'd be badass and amazing. As long as the animation was overseen by Alex Ross.
Yep. Which, that itself would be awesome. Although I will say, the new Marvel film that's just come out, Iron Man Hulk, avoid it. Avoid it like the plague.
Yeah, that looked terrible.
It was terrible. Luckily I didn't pay for it, I watched it via Netflix, but...
Oh, that's good. Well, if you paid Netflix, then strictly speaking, didn't you pay for it in some manner?
I paid for Netflix for other stuff, though.
Fair enough. Yeah, I want to say, I know we have at the library I work at, we have that there Superman, Supergirl, Brainiac movie that came out not too long ago. I keep meaning to see it at time.
I love that one. Did you watch the other one first, though, the Apocalypse one?
No, I should probably watch that first.
Now, technically they're not really in continuity, but in the comics they were. So one of them shows you how this version of Supergirl came about, if that makes sense.
I got you.
Which is pretty basic to the normal origin, but you get to see a little bit more. And then the next one, it assumes you know who she is.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so overall with the animation, like I said, I'd cue it up more to Marvel likes to hold Marvel, and it still does this. It likes to be bright, cheerful, and hold your hand when you go to watch its stuff. DC, as a rule, tries to go darker or tries to make the series match what look or feel the series is. Like Teen Titans looks completely different to Batman the Animated Series, which looks completely different to Batman Brave and the Bold, which looks completely different to the Green Lantern one. Now, the ones all in continuity look the same, but the standalone ones, they made them match whatever the tone was, and it worked.
Right. And what tone is Teen Titans Go matching?
Yeah. It's the tone of the show, which is meant to be like flash animation cheesiness, which I don't mind it, to be fair. But I will say Batman Brave and the Bold is a brilliant example of DC being more for... I hate to say that one sounds bad, but DC being more for the comic fans or more for the adults. Batman Brave and the Bold, because well, on the surface, the people looking at it just like, that's cheesy as fuck. But if you've read the old school comics, like the really fucking old ones, and you know who all these characters are, you get to see various different versions, like with the Blue Beetle and shit like that throughout them, who, let's face it, they're not going to get their own show. And they also play around with various inside jokes and parodies of stuff throughout the ages, including doing a Batman Scooby-Doo episode, or half an episode I should say, with the cast of Mystery Inc. crossing over to reference the old Batman Scooby-Doo films.
I remember that, yeah. That was fun.
Yeah, where they also parody the anime one, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think Batman Braving the Bold ended, right?
it did.
Yeah, they need a spin-off of that starring Aquaman in which he sings a song in every episode.
Yeah. My favourite episode of Batman Brave and the Bold will have to be the Super Dickery one. Superman gets, I think it was Red Kryptonite in the episode, but basically Superman turns evil, quote marks, because he's not really evil, but...
I thought Kryptonite made him go insane, not evil.
It messes with his mind, which makes him not care.
Okay, fair enough.
Basically shuts off his conscience in a lot of adaptations.
Okay.
But it was something like Red Kryptonite, or it may have been something else in the episode, but basically his conscience goes, and Superman's now going to act like a complete dick. So what do? They do a montage of him recreating all the various comic book covers that made him act like a dick, which was up on the site Super Dickery. Because when you take him out of context, he looks like a dick. And they made him recreate that, including the one where he has a fucking big Pope hat. It's genius.
I'm not sure I've seen that one.
Oh, you need to. It's wonderful.
Did they do the one where he was denying dying people water?
I'm not sure if they did include that one. I hope they did, but I can't remember because I haven't seen that one for a while. But yeah, that was awesome. The Super Dickery episode.
That's great.
And the person who wrote it had to be a fan due to the fact how many covers it referenced.
Yeah. Somebody created.
Yeah, which I like that, but yeah. So I think that's the main difference between the two of them is one's more holding your hand if you don't know who the characters are to try and walk you through. Like, okay, you kind of know this much about the character, so we're not gonna mess with your preconceptions. Whereas the DC ones are more like, you're gonna know who our characters are. You're a fan of our stuff. Enjoy what we write.
Pretty much, and interestingly, the thing about that is it actually makes sense when you think about the creators. When you think about DC, you have people like Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, these kind of people. They're those kind of writers where they love the characters so much that they know they are in and of themselves fans, so they basically create things that they as fans would enjoy these characters doing. Whereas you look at the other side, and you think of someone like, for example, Stan Lee. Stan Lee's the kind of guy that not only wants the fans to be able to enjoy the characters, he wants everyone to be able to enjoy the characters. And so he will walk you through, tell you who the characters are. Welcome, true believers. Here's Spider-Man. Here's Iron Man. Here's who these people are. Enjoy these characters. Learn about them. That's kind of who they are.
Yep, which can't help. I mean, as much as I hate the show, my nephew does enjoy the Ultimate Spider-Man show.
Okay.
I don't like it because it claims to be Ultimate Spider-Man, yet it's more 616 Spider-Man, besides having Black Nick Fury, but that's there mainly because of the movies, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And it does weird stuff where it's like, it doesn't give a shit what was in the comics and who these characters are. It's just like, no, you just want to know what the character is, fuck it, here you go. Like, stuff like, it made Harry Osborn, instead of being Green Goblin #2 or anything like that, he became Venom. The first Venom, too, so that shit's all over Eddie Brock and Harry's Green Goblin. Which, yeah, way to destroy two characters in one.
Pretty much.
But I will say Spectacular Spider-Man did a great job, because it was written by people who knew the character and stuff, and they wrote slightly more mature storylines while also having fun with it, like gang war storylines and stuff, which is awesome. But they were the differences anyway. The question would be, which one do you prefer? Which one do you prefer, Jim? And I said which one I prefer. I prefer the DC one, mainly because I'm more of a fan of those ones.
I think I'd probably agree with that, only because I know DC a lot better than I know Marvel. So I think I'm probably more comfortable with the DC only because I know a lot more about those characters, their rogues galleries, things like that. If you go to the Marvel side, the only character I have that well of knowledge on is Spider-Man and his rogues. I don't really know very many of the other. I mean, I don't, I'll watch stuff about X-Men or the Avengers or whatever, and I miss a lot of what's going on because I just don't know. So with the DC universe, I'm a lot more familiar with, with all the different characters in the universe, their relations, things like that. A lot of that probably comes from my playing of DCUO. But
I'm gonna say you're very knowledgeable of Spider-Man. Quick, name all his vehicles, including every buggy. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding with that one.
Spider-Mecha from the Japanese show.
Yeah, just because he should not have vehicles. And even the Ultimate Spider-Man show does that, where he gets a bike that spits out webs so he can go wee from the SHIELD helicarrier all the way down to the streets on a bike.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I just think DC was just because I know the characters more, maybe because I knew them more when I was a kid. It just, that always sort of spoke to me more. I mean, I always really enjoyed the Batman animated series, of course, and Batman Beyond. I always loved Batman Beyond. Whereas the X-Men show was okay, but I didn't really like it religiously. The Spider-Man one I really liked, but that was really the only one. And half the time I didn't even know what was going on. I just liked the fact that, look at these, it's bright, colorful supervillains, and Spider-Man's hilarious. That's pretty much what drew me into that show as a kid. Yep. So, basically, the DC ones kind of spoke to me more. It had cooler stories, the characters were more fun, and I just always really liked those shows a little bit better. However, recently, unfortunately, I haven't been watching much of any of them, unfortunately. But I did watch the Teen Titans. Teen Titans is a great show. Teen Titans Go, I've actually watched the episodes recently. Not that bad.
I will say out the modern ones, the ones I would say to check out would be the new Avengers show, if you like the Avengers. But if you like DC, the only new DC ones to check out in recent years would be Batman Brave and the Bold.
I've seen some episodes of that.
And definitely Young Justice.
I heard that was really good. I never got to see it before it went off the air. I need to watch it.
It looks amazing. It really does look amazing. But unlike most shows where you say, like, that's all you can say, it had great storytelling.
Yeah, I read a little bit about it where it had, like, like Superboy kind of came in later, wasn't the leader, like Aqualad was the leader, and it's a really unique dynamic of the team.
Yeah, it was cool. And so, yeah, Superboy comes in. He's basically in the first episode-ish, because the first two episodes about him breaking out, and then it sets the chain of action.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the reason it got cancelled is because they started to they realized, hey, girls are watching our show too, so they started to basically flesh out the female characters more, and Cartoon Network are like, but the girls don't buy action figures, you can't.
That's right, I remember hearing about that in the news.
Completely sexist and completely 100% bullshit. But I will also say, as much as like we said, we both prefer DC, however, I will also say, there's nothing wrong with the Marvel shows introducing you to the characters, and also the ones where they try to do new stuff too. Sometimes when they try to do stuff completely different to the comics, it can work. I point you over to X-Men Evolution or Wolverine and the X-Men. Both of those shows were very different to the comics. They tried to make it more like the movies. I say tried to because Evolution was more like the movies, and Wolverine and the X-Men seemed like it could have possibly been a follow-on to Evolution, if that makes sense. But those two shows were fucking brilliant with what they did. And they changed a lot of stuff. Like, they aged characters differently and stuff, and I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very good.
I liked it because it was true to the core. If that makes sense, of what the X-Men were, which I liked that. But yeah, that was our opinions on the difference between the DC animation and the Marvel animation.
Indeed.
And thank you for joining me, James.
Oh, not a problem, Mo. Happy to be here.
And see ya.